"Please, don't take my child," the young mother whispered, her trembling voice barely rising above the rain. "Take anything else, just not him." The words drifted across the crowded courthouse steps, silencing conversations that had filled the gray afternoon only seconds before. Emily Carter wrapped both arms around 6-year-old Noah, pulling him close beneath her faded blue coat as cold October rain soaked through the worn fabric. She hadn't slept in nearly 48 hours. Her sneakers were soaked. Her hands refused to stop shaking. But none of that mattered. The only thing she could think about was keeping her son safe. Around them, strangers slowed to watch. Some stared with sympathy. Others simply watched in silence, unsure what they were witnessing. 2 men in tailored black coats stood several feet away, their expressions unreadable beneath dark umbrellas. They had arrived without sirens, without raised voices, and without explaining why they wanted Noah. They simply repeated the same sentence over and over. "The child must come with us." Emily's heart pounded against her ribs. She had spent years protecting Noah from questions she couldn't answer herself. Why his skin never seemed to burn in the summer sun. Why strangers sometimes stopped walking just to stare into his unusual amber eyes. Why every family photograph seemed to blur around him after it was printed. She had always convinced herself there had to be ordinary explanations. There had to be. Noah buried his small face against her shoulder. "Mom," he whispered, "did I do something wrong?" Emily closed her eyes for a single heartbeat. "No," she answered immediately. "You did everything right." She kissed the top of his dark hair as rainwater rolled down her face. "No matter what happens, you stay behind me." The taller man took one careful step forward. "Mrs. Carter," he said calmly, "no one intends to harm your son." "Then stop trying to take him." Her voice cracked, but she refused to let go. The man glanced toward the street as though waiting for someone else. "Our king wishes only to meet the child." Emily almost laughed through her fear. A king? She assumed it was some kind of joke, some private organization hiding behind impossible titles. America didn't have kings. Real life certainly didn't. Thunder rolled across the dark sky. Then every black vehicle lining the curb shut off their engines at exactly the same moment. The silence that followed felt unnatural. Even the rain seemed quieter. Every man in the black coats straightened instantly. Heads lowered. No commands were spoken, yet everyone moved aside together, forming a clear path from the street to the courthouse steps. A long black sedan came to a smooth stop. Its door opened. A tall man stepped into the rain without an umbrella. He wore a perfectly tailored black overcoat that somehow remained untouched by the weather. His pale face seemed almost luminous beneath the storm clouds, framed by dark hair that moved gently with the wind. His calm gray eyes swept across the crowd before resting on Emily, and finally on Noah. No one spoke. No one even breathed loudly. The stranger's presence carried the quiet certainty of someone accustomed to absolute authority. Noah slowly lifted his head and looked directly into the man's eyes. Something impossible happened. A warm golden light flickered deep within the boy's amber irises for only a heartbeat before disappearing again. The stranger froze. For the first time, something almost human crossed his composed expression. Not anger, not surprise, recognition. He took one slow step closer and spoke with a voice so calm it somehow carried through the rain. "No one," he said, never looking away from the frightened little boy, "will separate this child from his mother." Emily stared at the stranger, unable to understand why every person around him lowered their heads, as though the storm itself had bowed in respect. The rain continued to fall, but the noise seemed distant now, swallowed by the weight of his promise. Noah slowly peeked over his mother's shoulder. The little boy's frightened breathing became steadier as his eyes remained fixed on the pale man, standing only a few feet away. The stranger did not move any closer. He simply stood there with perfect patience, allowing the frightened child to decide whether to trust him. The taller man in the black coat finally broke the silence. "Your Majesty," he said carefully. The council's instructions were very clear. Without turning his head, the pale man answered in a calm voice. "The council does not decide the fate of innocent children." The reply carried no anger, yet every guard immediately lowered their eyes. Emily looked from one face to another, trying to understand what kind of world she had accidentally stepped into. "Who are you?" she asked, tightening her arms around Noah once again. The stranger finally met her gaze. My name is Lucian Ashford. His voice remained gentle, almost surprisingly so. I know my appearance and the circumstances must seem impossible, but I have not come to take your son away. Emily shook her head. Then why are your people here? Lucian paused for only a moment. Because someone inside my kingdom believes your son belongs to them. Emily's pulse quickened. Kingdom? She repeated. What are you talking about? Lucian glanced briefly toward Noah before answering. There are truths that have remained hidden from both of you for many years. Emily immediately stepped backward. No. Her voice became firmer than before. My son belongs with me. That is the only truth I need. Something unexpectedly warm appeared in Lucian's expression. It was almost admiration. That is exactly why I am standing here instead of allowing others to come. Emily frowned. What does that mean? Lucian slowly removed a pair of dark leather gloves, revealing pale hands marked with faint silver patterns that shimmered beneath the ring. He deliberately kept both hands visible, making no sudden movement that could frighten Noah. May I ask your son one question? Emily hesitated. Every instinct told her to leave, yet Noah gently tugged on her sleeve. It is okay, Mom, the little boy whispered. He does not feel scary. Emily looked down in surprise. Noah had always been shy around strangers. Today was different. Lucian lowered himself until he was nearly at Noah's eye level. Has anyone ever told you that you dream about places you have never visited? Noah blinked. The castle. Lucian's expression froze for a fraction of a second. Emily looked confused. What castle? Noah looked up at her. The big one with the silver trees. I see it almost every night. Emily's heart skipped. Noah had mentioned strange dreams before, but she had always dismissed them as childhood imagination. Lucian slowly inhaled, as though confirming something he had hoped was impossible. Do you also hear music? He asked softly. Noah nodded. Someone sings my name when I cannot sleep. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. Even the rain no longer seemed cold. Lucian rose to his feet, his composed face hiding emotions that only his eyes betrayed. For centuries, he had trusted evidence over legends. Yet the frightened child standing before him had just described the royal sanctuary, a place no ordinary human had ever seen. Somewhere beyond the courthouse, thunder echoed once more. Far away, hidden behind layers of clouds, an ancient silver crest engraved upon Lucian's signet ring suddenly emitted a faint golden glow, and for the first time in generations, the forgotten prophecy began to awaken. Emily could not explain why the stranger's words unsettled her more than the impossible glow that had appeared in Noah's eyes. Every logical part of her mind insisted this had to be some elaborate misunderstanding, yet the look on Lucian Ashford's face carried something she had not expected. It was not triumph. It was concern. Real concern. The black-coated men remained perfectly still, waiting for a command that never came. Instead, Lucian slowly looked toward the dark clouds gathering above the city skyline. We no longer have much time, he said quietly. Emily immediately tightened her hold on Noah. Time for what? Lucian answered without hesitation. For others to discover what happened here. Before Emily could ask another question, one of the guards stepped forward, lowering his voice. Your Majesty, the Eastern observers have already sensed the awakening. Lucian's expression hardened. How many? We confirmed at least 3 noble houses have begun moving. Emily stared at them in disbelief. I have no idea what any of you are talking about. Lucian turned back toward her. That is exactly why you are in danger. She shook her head. No, we are leaving. She reached for Noah's hand and started down the courthouse steps. She barely managed 3 steps before Noah suddenly stopped walking. His small fingers slipped from hers as he looked toward the empty fountain across the street. Mom, he whispered. There is someone standing there. Emily followed his gaze. The fountain was completely empty. Rain splashed across the stone. There was no one. Noah, she said gently. There is nobody there. The little boy continued staring ahead. The lady is smiling at me. Lucian immediately stepped beside them. What does she look like? Noah answered without taking his eyes off the fountain. She has silver hair. She is wearing a blue dress. She keeps telling me not to be afraid. Lucian became unusually quiet. One of the older guards slowly lowered his head. It cannot be, he murmured. Emily felt another chill run through her body. Who is he talking about? Lucian took several seconds before replying. The last queen. Emily blinked. That is impossible. Yes, Lucian admitted softly. It should be. Noah smiled for the first time all afternoon. She said you have been lonely for a very long time. Lucian did not answer. His gray eyes remained fixed on the empty fountain, as though he could almost see what Noah was describing. Then Noah's smile faded. She is gone now. The warmth disappeared from the air. Traffic sounds slowly returned. People across the street resumed walking as though nothing unusual had happened. Emily felt completely lost. Someone needs to explain what is happening. Lucian finally nodded. You deserve the truth. He reached into his coat and removed an old silver pendant hanging from a thin chain. The design resembled an ancient tree surrounded by stars. Without stepping closer, he simply held it where Emily could see. The instant the pendant caught the light, Noah instinctively touched the center of his own chest beneath his sweater. Emily frowned. What are you doing? Noah looked surprised himself. Something is warm. Emily quickly pulled back the collar of his shirt. Hanging around Noah's neck beneath his clothing was a tiny pendant she had never seen before. It rested against his skin as though it had always belonged there. The shape matched Lucian's exactly, except one half was crafted in silver while the other glowed faintly with gold. Emily stared at her son in stunned silence. She had dressed him that morning. She knew with absolute certainty the necklace had not been there. Lucian slowly lowered his own pendant. His calm voice barely rose above the steady rain. The bond has revealed itself, which means someone hid your son from my world, and someone else has finally found him. Emily instinctively wrapped one hand around the newly appeared pendant while holding Noah close with the other. The tiny piece of gold felt warm against her fingertips, almost as if it carried its own heartbeat. She looked into her son's confused eyes and saw the same question reflected there. Neither of them understood how something that had never existed only moments earlier could now rest naturally against his chest. Tell me everything, Emily said, refusing to let fear control her voice. No riddles, no secrets. My son deserves the truth. Lucian remained silent for a long moment, choosing his words with extraordinary care. Many years ago, he finally began. Our kingdom believed an ancient bloodline had disappeared forever. Every record was sealed. Every symbol was hidden. We accepted that the prophecy had ended. Emily frowned. And now you think Noah is part of that prophecy? Lucian slowly nodded. I do not think. The bond has confirmed it. Emily immediately shook her head. That cannot be possible. Noah has lived with me his entire life. I believe you, Lucian answered without hesitation. The simple response caught her completely off guard. She had expected arguments, accusations, endless questions. Instead, he accepted her words without demanding proof. Then why would anyone want him? She asked quietly. Lucian looked toward the silent men standing behind him. Because there are those who see children as heirs before they see them as children. The sentence settled heavily over everyone present. Noah reached for his mother's hand. Mom, I do not want to go anywhere without you. Emily squeezed his fingers. You will. Not. Lucian heard every word. Without waiting for anyone else's approval, he turned toward the gathered guards. His voice remained calm, yet it carried the unmistakable authority of someone whose decisions shaped nations. Hear my command clearly. From this moment forward, Emily Carter and Noah Carter are under my direct protection. Every guard immediately lowered one knee. Your Majesty, the older guard said cautiously. The council will never approve such a declaration without a formal hearing. Lucian's expression never changed. Then they may object when they stand before me. Another uneasy silence followed. Even Emily could sense that something important had just happened. Whatever rules governed Lucian's hidden world, he had openly stepped beyond them. The older guard slowly rose again. If the noble houses arrive before we return, Lucian interrupted him with quiet certainty. They will find me standing here. Emily studied his face. There was no arrogance in his voice, only unwavering resolve. For the first time since the nightmare had begun, a small part of her fear loosened its grip. She still knew nothing about this impossible kingdom or the mysterious prophecies surrounding Noah, but one truth had become impossible to ignore. Lucian had every opportunity to separate them. Instead, he had publicly promised the opposite. Noah suddenly tugged gently on Lucian's sleeve. The king looked down. Thank you, the little boy said with complete sincerity. You kept your promise before I even asked. Something almost imperceptible softened in Lucian's pale features. It was not quite a smile, but it was close enough to transform the cold dignity that surrounded him. A promise given to protect a child, he replied softly, must never depend upon convenience. At that exact moment, a sharp chime echoed from inside one of the black vehicles. Every guard reached for a small silver device clipped beneath their coats. The older guard looked down at the glowing screen, and the color quietly drained from his face. He slowly raised his eyes toward Lucian. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "the council has already assembled. They are demanding that the boy be brought before them immediately, and they have issued an order that does not recognize your protection." Emily read the concern on every face except Lucian's. The king remained perfectly composed, as though the message from the council had merely confirmed something he had expected all along. He looked at the silver device in the older guard's hand for only a second before returning his attention to Emily and Noah. "The council may issue orders," he said calmly, "but I decide whether those orders are carried out." The words settled over the gathering with quiet authority. Emily had never met anyone who spoke so softly while making everyone else fall silent. She tightened Noah's coat against the chilly wind. "What happens now?" she asked. Lucian answered immediately. "We leave before others arrive." Emily hesitated. Every instinct warned her against climbing into a stranger's car, no matter how calm or trustworthy he appeared. She had spent years teaching Noah never to go anywhere with people they did not know. Now life seemed determined to test every lesson she had ever believed. Lucian appeared to understand her hesitation without her saying a word. "You are free to refuse," he said. "No one here will force you." Emily looked at him carefully. "If we stay?" Lucian glanced toward the darkening skyline beyond the courthouse. "Then others will come. Unlike me, they may care more about ancient traditions than frightened families." His honesty surprised her once again. He was not trying to frighten her into obedience. He was simply telling her the truth as he understood it. Noah gently squeezed her hand. "Mom," he whispered, "I think we should go with him." Emily knelt until she was eye level with her son. "Why?" Noah looked toward Lucian for a moment before answering. "Because when he promised not to separate us, it felt real." Emily searched her son's face. Noah had always trusted his instincts. More than once they had kept them out of dangerous situations. She slowly stood and looked back at Lucian. "If we come with you, we stay together. Every minute, every room, every conversation." Lucian inclined his head. "You have my word. And if someone tries to change..." "That." Lucian's gray eyes became perfectly still. "Then they answer to me." The older guard quietly opened the rear door of the long black sedan. Instead of entering first, Lucian stepped aside. "After you." Emily noticed the gesture immediately. A man who expected absolute obedience would have entered first. Instead, he invited them before taking a single step himself. She helped Noah into the warm leather seat before climbing in beside him. Lucian entered only after both of them were settled, taking the seat across from them rather than beside them, giving the frightened mother as much space as possible. The door closed with a gentle click, shutting out the sound of the rain. Inside, the vehicle was unexpectedly peaceful. Soft lights glowed along the ceiling. A folded blanket rested on one seat. A small wooden box held bottled water, fresh fruit, and neatly wrapped sandwiches. Noah stared curiously. Lucian noticed. "Long journeys are easier when children are comfortable," he said simply. Emily looked around in silence. Nothing inside the car resembled the frightening image she had imagined. There were no restraints, no hidden guards, only quiet dignity. The driver pulled away from the courthouse as the convoy moved smoothly through the wet streets of the city. Noah leaned against the window, watching raindrops race across the glass. "Where are we going?" he asked. Lucian looked ahead for several moments before answering. "To a place where your questions deserve honest answers." The city lights slowly faded behind them as the convoy climbed into the wooded hills beyond the suburbs. Far ahead, through the mist and falling rain, the outline of towering stone walls slowly emerged above the trees. Emily's breathing caught as countless warm lights appeared behind the ancient windows of a castle unlike anything she had ever imagined. And waiting behind those walls was the council that had already decided Noah's future without ever meeting the little boy. The convoy rolled beneath an enormous stone archway as iron gates opened without a sound, revealing a castle that seemed untouched by time. Emily had expected something cold and forbidding, yet warm golden lights glowed from hundreds of tall windows, reflecting across rain-soaked courtyards lined with silver-leafed trees. The air itself felt different, carrying the scent of cedar, fresh rain, and old stone instead of the noise and smoke of the city they had left behind. Noah pressed his face gently against the window. "It is the place from my dreams," he whispered. Lucian watched the little boy carefully, but said nothing. The words alone confirmed what he had feared for years. The car came to a smooth stop beneath a covered entrance where dozens of attendants already stood waiting in perfect silence. None of them rushed forward. None of them reached for the passengers. Instead, every person bowed respectfully as Lucian stepped from the vehicle. He turned immediately and offered his hand, not to Emily, but to Noah. "Only if you wish," he said gently. Noah looked toward his mother first. Emily nodded once. The little boy accepted Lucian's hand, climbing carefully onto the polished stone beneath the shelter while Emily followed close beside him. She noticed something unusual almost immediately. Every servant who looked at Noah smiled kindly before lowering their eyes. But when they looked at her, curiosity quietly replaced certainty. She understood why. She was wearing a faded coat, worn jeans, and shoes still stained with mud from the courthouse steps. She did not belong in a place like this. Before self-consciousness could settle into her thoughts, an elderly woman wearing a deep green dress approached with measured steps. Her silver hair was neatly braided, and gentle wrinkles framed warm blue eyes. She bowed first to Lucian before smiling at Emily. "Welcome," she said softly. "I am Margaret, keeper of the royal household." Emily hesitated. "You know my name?" Margaret smiled. "His Majesty made certain every room would be prepared before you arrived." Emily blinked in surprise. "Rooms," Lucian answered quietly. "You both need rest before difficult conversations begin." Emily immediately looked at him. "I thought you said the council was waiting." "They are," Lucian replied. "They can continue waiting." One of the noble advisors standing near the entrance stepped forward with visible concern. "Your Majesty, delaying the assembly may create further division." Lucian turned only slightly toward him. "A frightened child will not stand before an impatient council tonight." The advisor lowered his head without another word. Margaret gently motioned toward the grand staircase. "Please allow us to show you your suite." Emily instinctively shook her head. "No separate rooms." Margaret's expression softened. "There is only one family suite prepared." Emily relaxed ever so slightly. They followed Margaret through long marble hallways illuminated by crystal chandeliers that cast warm reflections across polished floors. Portraits of kings and queens lined the walls, yet Emily noticed something unexpected. Every painting showed members of the royal family standing beside ordinary people. Teachers, bakers, farmers, physicians, children. She slowed beside one portrait of a queen holding hands with an elderly woman wearing a simple apron. Who was she? Emily asked. Margaret smiled proudly. The queen believed kindness should always stand beside power. Noah stopped walking in front of another painting. His amber eyes widened. "Mom," he whispered, "that is the lady from the fountain." Emily slowly turned toward the portrait. The silver-haired queen in the painting wore the same blue dress Noah had described outside the courthouse. Beneath the frame rested a small brass plaque. "Beloved Queen Eleanor, gone from this world 40 years ago." Emily felt a chill travel down her spine as Lucian quietly lowered his eyes. And for the first time since entering the castle, she realized that Noah's mysterious visitor had not simply known the king's name. She had once been his family. Emily stood motionless before the portrait, unable to look away from the gentle face of Queen Eleanor. Every detail Noah had described matched perfectly, from the silver hair to the flowing blue gown and the peaceful smile that seemed almost alive beneath the soft glow of the chandelier. Noah quietly reached for his mother's hand. "She told me not to be scared," he whispered. "She said you were tired from protecting me by yourself." Emily swallowed hard. She had never shared the weight of those lonely years with anyone. Somehow, hearing those words from her own son made the burden feel visible for the first time. Lucian stepped beside the portrait, his expression unusually thoughtful. "My grandmother believed courage often looked ordinary," he said quietly. "She used to say that the people history remembers are rarely the ones who sought greatness. They were simply the ones who chose kindness when it was difficult." Margaret lowered her head respectfully. Her Majesty repeated those words almost every day. Emily looked from the portrait to Lucian. Noah could not have known any of this. No, Lucian replied. He could not. Before anyone could speak again, the warm silence was interrupted by the steady footsteps of another attendant approaching from the far end of the corridor. The young man bowed deeply before Lucian. Your Majesty, the council has requested your immediate presence for the third time. Lucian nodded once. Tell them I will attend shortly. The attendant hesitated. They have also requested that the child be presented before the assembly. Emily instinctively pulled Noah closer. Lucian answered before she could speak. The child will remain with his mother. The attendant bowed again without argument and quietly departed. Margaret watched him disappear before turning toward Lucian. They are growing impatient. Lucian allowed himself a faint smile. That has never concerned me. Emily looked at him carefully. Why are they so determined to meet Noah? Lucian slowly walked toward a tall window overlooking the rain-soaked gardens below. Beyond the glass, silver trees shimmered beneath the evening sky exactly as Noah had described from his dreams. For centuries, Lucian said, our kingdom has been governed by tradition. Traditions protect us, but they can also blind us. Some members of the council see prophecies before they see people. They see bloodlines before they see families. Emily folded her arms protectively. Then they are wrong. Lucian turned toward her. I agree. The simplicity of his answer surprised her again. There was no hesitation, no political calculation, just certainty. Noah slowly walked toward the window beside Lucian. Do you come here when you are sad? He asked innocently. Lucian looked genuinely surprised by the question. Sometimes. Noah nodded thoughtfully. I do that too. For several quiet seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Noah pointed toward the distant garden below. There is a swing over there. Lucian followed his gaze. Hidden beneath the branches of an enormous silver oak stood an old wooden swing, gently moving in the breeze. My grandmother had that built, Lucian said softly. She believed every child who visited the castle deserved one place where they could simply be children. Noah smiled. Can I see it tomorrow? Lucian's expression warmed in a way Emily had not seen before. Yes. Emily noticed the change immediately. The cold, untouchable king she had met outside the courthouse was slowly disappearing whenever Noah spoke to him. Before she could understand why, a deep bell echoed once through the castle, its rich sound rolling across every hallway. Margaret's smile faded. The council has entered the Hall of Crowns, she said quietly. Lucian straightened, the softness leaving his expression as duty settled over him once more. He looked directly at Emily. Tonight, I must face them alone. Then he made one final promise before turning toward the great doors at the end of the corridor. No matter what is decided inside that chamber, when I return, you and Noah will still be together. The heavy doors of the Hall of Crowns closed behind Lucian with a deep echo that lingered through the ancient stone corridors. Emily stood silently beside Margaret, listening until the sound faded completely. She had known the king for only a few hours, yet the castle somehow felt different without his quiet presence. Noah looked toward the hallway where Lucian had disappeared. He is worried, the little boy said softly. Margaret smiled with gentle sadness. He always carries the worries of others before his own. Emily looked at the elderly woman. Has he always been like this? Margaret folded her hands together as they slowly continued toward the family suite. Since he became king. Long before that, he laughed much more. Noah glanced up. What happened? Margaret hesitated for only a moment. He learned that protecting everyone sometimes means standing alone. The words settled quietly in Emily's heart. She understood loneliness better than she wished she did. The suite waiting for them overlooked the castle gardens. A fire crackled gently inside the stone fireplace, warming the spacious room without feeling extravagant. Children's books rested neatly on one shelf. Fresh clothes in several sizes had been carefully arranged on a nearby table. Emily stopped in surprise. How could anyone know what Noah would need? Margaret smiled. His Majesty instructed us to prepare for possibilities rather than certainties. Emily ran her fingers across a neatly folded blue sweater. Every detail had been considered before they even arrived. It was not luxury that touched her. It was thoughtfulness. Noah wandered toward the large window overlooking the silver oak and the old swing below. Mom, he whispered, I think someone is singing again. Emily hurried to his side. Do you hear the same voice? Noah nodded. She says everything grows better when people keep their promises. Emily looked outside. The garden was empty except for the gentle movement of branches in the evening breeze. Margaret quietly lowered her eyes. Queen Eleanor believed promises were living things. She often said they became stronger each time they were kept. Emily felt another shiver. The resemblance between Noah's words and the Queen's beliefs could no longer be dismissed as coincidence. A quiet knock interrupted the moment. A young attendant entered carrying a silver tray with warm soup, bread, fruit, and hot tea. He bowed respectfully before placing everything on the table. His Majesty requested that dinner be served before the meeting concludes, he explained. He was concerned the young master might be hungry after such a difficult day. Noah smiled shyly. Please tell him thank you. The attendant returned the smile. I will. After the door closed, Emily looked at the untouched meal. She realized Lucian had not eaten with them. He had gone directly into a confrontation with the council while making certain they would be cared for first. Down below, hidden behind layers of ancient stone, voices had begun to rise inside the Hall of Crowns. Lucian stood alone before 12 council members seated beneath towering banners embroidered with silver crests. One elder rose slowly from his chair. Your Majesty, he declared, the child belongs to the kingdom. Lucian answered without raising his voice. The child belongs to his mother. Another elder stepped forward. Tradition demands that the heir be raised within royal authority. Lucian remained perfectly still. Tradition exists to protect families, not divide them. Murmurs spread across the chamber. Finally, the oldest council member leaned upon his carved staff and spoke the words every noble had feared. If you refuse to surrender the boy to the council, Your Majesty, then you place your own crown in conflict with the oldest laws of our kingdom. Lucian lifted his eyes toward the ancient throne standing behind the assembly. His answer came without hesitation, calm enough to silence the entire hall. Then the crown will answer to the promise I made before it answers to any law. Silence settled over the Hall of Crowns after Lucian's declaration. 12 council members exchanged measured glances, as though centuries of unquestioned tradition had suddenly met something they had forgotten how to challenge. The oldest elder rested both hands upon his carved staff and slowly descended the marble steps until only a few feet separated him from the throne. Your Majesty, he said with careful respect, a king may carry compassion in his heart, but he must also carry the weight of every law that came before him. Lucian met the elder's gaze without anger. And every law was once a choice made by someone who believed it served justice. Another council member rose from his seat. If the prophecy is true, the boy belongs to history. Lucian answered immediately. No child belongs to history before he belongs to his family. The chamber grew quiet once more. None of the elders argued with the words themselves. Instead, they struggled with what those words demanded. Above them, rain continued to tap softly against the ancient stained glass windows, while upstairs Emily sat beside Noah, gently brushing his hair back as he slowly drifted to sleep on the wide window seat overlooking the silver gardens. The long day had finally caught up with him. His small hand still rested protectively over the mysterious golden pendant. Emily watched his peaceful face and whispered the promise she had repeated every night since he was born. I will always find a way. Margaret quietly entered carrying a warm blanket. Without speaking, she draped it over both mother and son before taking a seat nearby. He reminds me of someone, the elderly woman said softly. Emily smiled faintly. Queen Eleanor? Margaret nodded. She believed the strongest people were those who made everyone around them feel safe. Emily looked down at Noah. He does that without even trying. At that same moment, the heavy doors of the Hall of Crowns slowly opened once again. An elderly archivist hurried inside, carrying an ancient wooden case sealed with silver wax. Every council member turned toward him in surprise. Forgive the interruption, the archivist said, bowing deeply. While searching the royal records, we discovered a document that has not been opened in more than 40 years. The oldest elder frowned. Who ordered this search? The archivist lowered his eyes. No one. The hidden archive unlocked itself when the royal crest began glowing this evening. A quiet murmur spread across the chamber. With careful hands, the archivist broke the ancient seal and unfolded a faded parchment covered in elegant handwriting. At the bottom rested the unmistakable signature of Queen Eleanor herself. Lucian recognized it instantly. The archivist read aloud, "To whoever guards this kingdom after me, if the child of the hidden bond is ever found, remember this above all else. Protect the one who raised the child with love, for love, not blood alone, reveals the future of the crown." No one spoke. The words hung in the air like the final note of a forgotten song. The oldest elder slowly removed the ceremonial medallion from around his neck and bowed his head toward Lucian. "Her Majesty's final instruction has never failed this kingdom," he said. Quietly, "Neither shall we." Hours later, Lucian gently knocked on the suite door himself instead of sending an attendant. Emily opened it cautiously. Before she could ask what had happened, Lucian smiled for the first time since they had met. It was not the smile of a victorious king. It was the quiet relief of a man who had kept his word. "The council has accepted one condition," he said. "Noah will remain with you. Always." Emily closed her eyes as tears of relief quietly filled them. Noah, awakened by the familiar voice, walked sleepily into the room and looked up at Lucian. "You came back," he whispered. Lucian knelt until they were eye level. "I told you I would." Noah wrapped his small arms around the king without hesitation. For one brief moment, the weight of crowns, prophecies, and ancient laws faded into silence. Outside, dawn slowly broke across the silver trees, filling the castle with gentle golden light. And in that quiet morning, the oldest truth of the kingdom finally revealed itself. Even the strongest promise begins with the simple decision to protect someone who cannot protect themselves.